For Western Massachusetts, this is Western Mass News.
We begin with chilling new details on a murder investigation that's been playing out this week in Greenfield. Thanks for joining us, everyone. For Western Mass News at 6, I'm Chris Pisano.
And I'm Abby Carnevale. We've obtained court documents that reveal blood and decomposing body parts were found at the crime scene. And Western Mass News reporter Reagan Lokri joins us live in studio after taking a closer look at what police found and what suspect they had to say. And Reagan, what did you find?
Yeah, Abby and Chris, 42-year-old Danielle Herberger Brown was arrested at the Albany International Airport in New York just hours after police found dismembered human remains inside his former apartment in Greenfield. It turns out the suspect had plans to leave the country. However, he didn't make it too difficult for police to determine his whereabouts before he ever hopped on a plane. On Monday, the landlord of 92 Chapman Street in Greenfield reported a foul odor after doing a check on apartment E, where former tenant and now murder suspect Danielle Herberger Brown was recently asked to vacate. According to court documents obtained by Western Mass News, that's where police found remains of an unknown person in a trash barrel. The report states the officer saw portions of a body that appeared to be wrapped in a plastic bag and placed in the trash barrel, consistent with an attempt to conceal and dispose of the body. That's when Greenfield police requested the assistance of the Massachusetts State Police Detective Unit. The responding trooper stated he observed decomposing skin near the top of the barrel, and he observed a human hand that appeared swollen and decomposing with fluids leaking from the barrel. To the left of the trash barrel, there was a black hatchet on the ground. Police also seized several knives as well as other items. From this point, attention turned from the Greenfield apartment to finding Herberger Brown, and it only took a few hours. Based on the report we obtained from Albany, New York police, he was located and arrested early Tuesday morning at Albany International Airport after police were able to ping his cell phone location in addition to utilizing security camera footage. The suspect told investigators he was planning on visiting his mother outside of the country. He also confirmed to police that he had lived at the Chapman Street apartment where the remains were found. He initially told them he had been in and out of hospitals and hadn't been back at his apartment in months. But the police report reveals after some time, Herberger Brown told investigators he got into a physical altercation with an unknown person who had broken into his apartment, and he told police he believed that person was using drugs and was attacking him. And towards the end of the altercation, Herberger Brown told police the unknown person's heart stopped. After the altercation, Herberger Brown told investigators that he left the apartment to get his tires rotated on his car. No word who the victim is at this point. Herberger Brown remains in custody at the Albany County Correctional Facility. No word when he might be brought back to Massachusetts to face charges. Reporting live in studio, Reagan Lokri for Western Mass News.
Reagan, thank you for that live.